Emily, tell us what's on your radar today.
Well, when Propublica's report on a damning trove of billionaire tax documents broke, the information confirmed much of what we already know about America's class of high-profile, highly subsidized crony capitalists. They use their wealth to keep more of their wealth, and it's usually perfectly legal because, again, they use their wealth to ensure lobbyists keep it that way. Still, the report relied heavily on Propublica's creation of a, quote, true tax rate metric, which, according to that outlet, quote, compared how much in taxes the 25 richest Americans paid each year to how much Forbes estimated their wealth grew in that same period. So the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal weighed in on what they call the phony true tax rate designation, noting, quote, wealth and income are different, and what Americans pay is a tax on income, not wealth. Well, that's true, but it still opens up debate on capital gains. The fact that wealth allows the wealthy to engage in so much tax dodging is kind of the point. The Libertarian Cato Institute, funded like most think tanks by wealthy donors, pulled some really interesting data that found the leaked tax documents reflect, quote, atypical situations. There's some good news in their analysis, which actually suggests the tax burden is not as dramatically out of whack as we might think. Now take a look at this chart, which compares the Propublica data to data from the Congressional Budget Office, the Tax Policy Center, the Joint Committee on Taxation, and the IRS itself. Their analysis shows the top 1% of earners paid about 26.6% in total taxes between income and payroll, according to the CBO. The top 0.1% paid 25%, and the top 0.01% paid 30%. Now, my response is still, so what? It's helpful context and perhaps a useful check on Propublica's overeager editorializing, but the atypicality of Propublica's documents is still wrong. As a refresher, here are the facts ripped right from the beginning of that report. Quote, in 2007, Jeff Bezos, then a multimillionaire and now the world's richest man, did not pay a penny in federal income taxes. He achieved the feat again in 2011. In 2018, Tesla founder Elon Musk, the second richest person in the world, also paid no federal income taxes. Michael Bloomberg managed to do the same in recent years, the report continued. Billionaire investor Carl Icahn did it twice. George Soros paid no federal income tax 3 years in a row. These are executives who, by the way, make money off their companies while often lobbying for and receiving federal subsidies. That's our money. Amazon has gone for years at a time without paying a dime in federal income tax. I interviewed Molly Kinder of the Brookings Institution late last year on a report she helped complete on the way major corporations like Amazon treated their workers over the course of the pandemic relative to their success. Many of the least generous companies were the most financially successful, posting huge profits. That report noted Amazon and Walmart combined earned an extra $10.7 billion in profit compared to last year, an increase of 70% and 45% respectively. Their workers, on the other hand, have received below average COVID-19 related compensation, an extra 95 cents an hour and 63 cents per hour respectively over the 8 months plus of the pandemic, representing just 6% pay bumps for full-time workers that earn starting wages. 6%. Meanwhile, the report added, Amazon and Walmart stock prices are up 65% and 41% since the start of the pandemic, adding more than $70 billion to the wealth of Jeff Bezos, Amazon CEO, and $45 billion to the Walton family, the country's richest family, who own more than half of Walmart shares. It's true. Those companies helped a lot of workers and consumers muddle through the pandemic. That doesn't render their treatment of those workers sufficient. It's actually a statement on the increasingly nihilistic morality of today's capitalist class, which an interesting New Jacobin essay notes compares with the WASPs of yesteryear, which we should have no nostalgia for their bigotry, the article accurately says, but does actually add, they quote, had a unity and authority that our current rabble of grifters and parvenists lacks. It's different. And it's time for the right to start acknowledging that. Actually, there's a good argument to be made that secularization has bred a disturbing capitalist nihilism that prizes greed above all else and helps the ultra-rich mute their consciences all the easier. But that's a conversation for another day. The cronyist disparities here are wrong on their face, and no egg-headed defense of capital gains changes the basic unfairness. If you're generating wealth in the system, you should share the tax burden by paying into the system at a comparable rate. The wealth-income divide is one that clearly benefits these 25 billionaires more than, say, the 12% Cato found of workers in the 40 to 60% category owed the feds. Again, while Propublica's true tax rate does compare apples to oranges, that's kind of the point. Guys like Bezos create a lot of jobs and a lot of benefits for consumers, and even taxing them at 100% would not solve our problems. But none of that excuses these tiny tax bills. Yet the Wall Street Journal's editorial board described the, quote, real scandal as the, quote, someone leaking confidential IRS information about individuals to serve a political agenda. Two things can be true at once, and it's reflective of problems on the right that this report isn't upsetting the conservative sensibility, which should loathe cronyism just as much as the left. It can be true that the IRS leak is questionable, while also being true that the leak revealed an injustice. It can be true that the leaks revealed, quote, atypical tax situations for the rich, while also being true that even the atypical situations are a problem. Whether you support a wealth tax or not, you can still see the injustice as a scandal. Complicated tax codes benefit the rich. Simplified tax codes could address that, but the entrenchment of special interests in Washington all but guarantees meaningful reforms will not come from either the left or the right. Blame the lobbyists who cash Bezos' checks, blame Bezos for slurping up subsidies, blame the government for giving them out. But it's time to stop shrugging off the crony capitalists who benefit immensely from our system and our taxpayer money, paying almost nothing back into it, let alone relative to the rest of us. Colin, it is absolutely true that people like Jeff Bezos and the Walton family do create a lot of jobs. Hey, they have helped consumers, like I said, muddle through this pandemic. At the same time, two things can be true. They can create a lot of jobs, and they can still be bad actors who are finding ways to pay almost nothing in taxes. So while they may be creating wealth in the system, they treat workers poorly. There's new reporting on Amazon's treatment of workers out in the New York Times literally just yesterday on that note. So they treat workers poorly. And on top of that, they take our taxpayer money while figuring out how they don't have to pay any taxes into the system. So while they may pay money into the system by creating jobs, taxes are still a part of what we all have to pay into the system.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you bring up a point, right? They're creating jobs, and those jobs are normally lower paid jobs, and those people are paying taxes as a counterbalance. So here's the interesting thing, right? You said that the right and the left should be concerned about this, and I agree, although maybe for different reasons because of where we fundamentally come from. However, on the right, I'm interested to hear, the support of capitalism and the praying at the shrine of capitalism can be completely undercut when that capitalism is so far out of whack that actually people aren't paying any taxes, and the people who are working in the system are starting to attack that system itself. It's not helping everyone anymore.
Right.
And that will eventually fall apart. And then on the left, this has led to this resurgence and kind of focus on, hey, this is a broken system, it doesn't benefit us, and it leans towards socialism that the right is so concerned about. So if the right is actually concerned about protecting the idea of capitalism and the capitalist market system that exists in the United States, they ought to make the system a little bit more fair.
Oh yeah, no, I agree 100%. That's exactly it, and that's what's frustrating. And I said this in this radar, I said it in a radar last week. Cronyism should be as upsetting to true believers of capitalism and free markets as it is to believers of socialism, because it's what undercuts your system of markets. It's what undercuts your capitalist system. We're never going to have a real free market, libertarian fantasy system in this country. It's just never going to happen. We're never going to have the fantasy socialist system in this country. But we have to make it more fair. We have to root out cronyism, because cronyism isn't just unjust. It's actually also wildly inefficient. It's not a good way for us to go about our business in this country. And the fact that it has for years really gotten a pass on the right. That's not to say, there have been some incredible journalists, and Tim Carney is one great example of this. His book, The Big Ripoff, I highly recommend everybody reading. Peter Schweitzer is another one. There's been a lot of really good work on cronyism from the right. But there's also been this instinct to just say, well, regulations are what the left wants, we have to sort of shrug it off. These people are generating immense wealth. They're creating a more prosperous nation. So, it's not the top of our priority to start regulating regulating the capitalists. But it should be, because you can't have a system that works efficiently, that actually does allow for the generation of prosperity in a way that really truly lifts workers and really truly benefits people, if cronyism isn't rooted out of that system.
100%. And I think, again, there are winners and losers here, right? The winners, obviously, you've highlighted in your piece. The losers are the workers, right? They got us through this, pandemic, right? Like, Amazon helped you and me and everybody make it through by getting us the stuff we needed when we couldn't go anywhere to get it.
At a lower price. Yeah.
At a lower price. And those people are out of jobs now, or they weren't paid, in accordance with the efforts that they actually put out to keep the entire country moving. We kind of owe them a debt. And I think that should be regulated. That should be corrected for. And there's one interesting point that I think you bring up, and that's like the right says these are regulations, and these regulations are inherently bad because they're regulations, right? But if the regulation, like, I've never met a billionaire who says, I'm not going to make $1 billion, or I'm not going to, aspire to be a more profitable organization because I got to pay a little bit more in taxes. Nobody thinks that way.
No.
This is a fallacy, right? Like, these people still want to win economically, and that desire to win is not going to be inhibited by the fact that they got to pay a little bit more in taxes.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all. And that's what I was really trying to lay out here. I mean, it's really, they can handle this burden. And no, it's really popular on the right to say taxation is theft. And that's a really, I think it's just an asinine statement. I think, the proper way to say that would be overtaxation is theft. And there are a lot of hardworking people in this country who are overtaxed, absolutely overtaxed, and then their money is wasted and blown on nonsense priorities by the government. And it happens all the time, and it affects a whole lot of people, and it affects a whole lot of workers. But to just say, to have this sort of taxation is theft mentality, because when, again, the government is also creating infrastructure that helps people like Jeff Bezos flourish and create prosperity, is stupid.
Maybe we can flip that on its head and say, yeah, maybe your idea of taxation is theft, but subsidies might be theft.
Yeah, right. And again, they get so much taxpayer money. I mean, they take so many subsidies and then turn around and don't get taxed on their money. The system is set up to, obviously, the rich are able to protect their wealth by buying lobbyists, by buying access, and at the end of the day, it's not fair, and it's perfectly okay to believe two things can be true: that they are creating prosperity, but that they're going about it in a really awful and shitty way. So I'm looking forward to what's on your radar next, Colin.